Hello, guys, girls, and everything in between or outside of that. I would like to welcome you back to another episode of me exploring the World of Warcraft Alpha and comparing it to what's in the 1.12 vanilla version. Today with Stonetalon Mountains. A quick rundown on the history of Stonetalon Mountains because I think it is relevant because it's reflected especially in the early design of the zone. Stonetalon Mountains was actually the southern part of the Ashenvale Forest up until the point where the Venture Co. logging company kind of destroyed it, and that's also the reason why the only thing that's really resembling the flora and fauna of Ashenvale in Stonetalon Mountain at this point is the Stonetalon Peak, evidently because it's being kind of protected by the night elves and their nature magic or whatever you want to call it. Look, I'm not a lore expert, I'm just observing. So the thing is with Stonetalon Mountains that there are some certain differences between the alpha version, which we're going to be taking a look at, that was released, so to speak, in a alpha test in 2003, and the actual 1.12 version, which we'll be comparing it to. And most notably is that at the entrance to Stonetalon, coming from the Barrens, there are Grimtotem kind of blocking your path between yourself and Malaka Jin, the first Horde hub in this southern part of the zone. And in the alpha version, these are not present. They are, in fact, Venture Co. loggers, and there are no Grimtotem in basically the whole zone whatsoever. It's full of Venture Co., and the chart veil itself hasn't really changed also, but we'll get to that later. So the main antagonists in the Stonetalon zone are the Venture Co's, and you can find them in the Windshear Crack, but also here at the entrance coming from the Barrens, which is normally occupied by the Grimtotem. And you can really see that there was a lot more of a focus on the nefarious workings of the Venture Co. company and them kind of destroying nature, which I suppose might have been toned down a little bit because, most Horde players wouldn't really care about that coming from the Barrens. Tauren would, obviously, but Orcs, I don't think that they're going to be, too mad about the Venture Co. company. So it makes sense from a narrative standpoint also that they changed the first point of contact coming from the Barrens into Stonetalons for Horde players to be Grimtotems, something that actually kind of matters lore-wise and context-wise to Horde players as opposed to, the Venture Co. company, which doesn't matter to Horde players as much, I think. Also, you saw a Ogre here, one of the old Ogre models. And, I go on and on about how good the chests look in the alpha, but not this one. This chest is a low-res alpha chest. There are better alpha chests out there, believe you me. So yeah, I'm just kind of like going through this here. You can see there is a lumber mill where normally the road would be with all the tents and kind of like the dead, I almost said dead corpses, the corpses and the burnt down huts and hovels, that the Grimtotems kind of affected. And this is right before we, go up the hill and go to where the path forks off to the left to Malaka Jin, which is in the game, by the way, but Malaka Jin is not called Malaka Jin, it's called Sunrock Retreat, and it does indeed have the Flight Master from Sunrock Retreat. Now, you will not be surprised to hear that obviously the actual Sunrock Retreat, where we find it in the 1.12 version, doesn't exist. It's blocked off, and you cannot go to the chart veil from there either. So there's a difference already right off the bat. Also, the Webwinder, I don't know what it's called actually. The place where you go to kill the elite spider is not in the game either. Neither is the Boulder Slide Ravine. Windshear Crag, I already mentioned it, hasn't changed one bit. Ziz Physics, the guy in the goblin in the hut that gives quests to both Alliance and Horde, is where he is supposed to be, only his hut isn't there. Interestingly enough, I found a merchant, and I may have already been aware of that merchant at some point in the past, but when I came across him today recording, I was actually flabbergasted. But yeah, he sells the schematic for the Goblin jumper cables and some random green BOEs as well as some trash, and he's both present in the alpha version as well as the 1.12 version. And interestingly enough, right behind him, you can see there is something resembling a path that's kind of like, to be found in the mountains, and it lets you either go to the right, which ends in a dead end, or to the left with some jumping and some speed boost. You can actually go to the main path that will lead you further through the zone. And this is something that you will see reflected in a lot of Stonetalon Mountains, both in the 1.12 version as well as the alpha version. And the fact is that when they were designing World of Warcraft, they didn't have too much of a linear kind of experience in mind. I was watching designer Dave, who's also here on YouTube, and if you're interested, you should absolutely check out his channel, because he is one of the guys that worked on the alpha and on the very, very early versions of World of Warcraft with some quest design and some other stuff. And he actually has some really, really valuable insights. One of those is that, as I said, it was supposed to be a lot less linear, and you were supposed to kind of traverse the mountains or go through caves under mountains to get to different zones. And there were a lot of different avenues you could take to get from point A to point B, which was something that they kind of toned down a little bit more when they realized, wait a minute, this will probably make for a bad new player experience when people keep kind of exploring and ending up in zones that just get them killed. So that's why they changed that and made it a lot more linear, according to designer Dave, obviously. And you can see with Stonetalon being one of those very, very early designed zones, there is so many forking paths that kind of end in a dead end, but some of those are even positioned in ways where you could have, imagined this cave, which obviously leads to nowhere, being a path to, for example, Malgor. There is in the 1.12 version, even not yet in the alpha version, a cave right across from Boulder Slide Ravine, which kind of would lead to Malgor, but, it just doesn't serve any purpose. And obviously we have the lumber mill in the middle of nowhere, kind of between the Charred Vale and the Stonetalon Peak. Here on the 1.12 version, I can show you a little bit of that. I tried getting there on the alpha, but sadly, my free camera doesn't work for the alpha for some reason. I guess it's just because it's a really, really old client and it doesn't let me, move around freely. So I'm kind of constricted to where I can get with my character. But as you can see here, I did go around the Stonetalon Peak and I tried kind of jumping to where I would imagine the lumber mill would be on the 1.12 version, the Inaccessible lumber mill. And you can see that I didn't make it there. So this is where it would be. What you can see right now, it's just that it's not there. So this was also added way, way later. And at the Stonetalon Peak also there is a sort of path like that that you could imagine would lead you to Ashenvale. So I think this is the most interesting kind of takeaway from exploring Stonetalon that I can make, is that you can really, really see what designer Dave was talking about in the early design philosophy, with the game being a lot more open and the world being explorable, kind of at your own volition and at your own pace, with all these pathways that were kind of hinted at but not really filled out. There is, of course, the path that leads past Sunrock Retreat, above Sunrock Retreat, to the way that leads to Charred Vale, which is not in the alpha version, but it is in the 1.12 version, and it doesn't really serve a purpose. To be honest, I usually forget about it. I usually forget that it exists, and I just go the long way around. Maybe there's a lot of people that can relate to that. Now, this is interesting, by the way. We have a night elf right outside the Stonetalon Peak, but from my understanding, this is not supposed to be a night elf. This is more than likely supposed to be a high elf / blood elf, which it was later changed to for the Burning Crusade, because this character does exist still in the 1.12 version, but it is actually using a blood elf model. Now, most high elves using night elf models during the alpha were later changed to use the old high elf models, which for example, from the captain in Ratchet giving you the quest to kill the guys in Northwatch Hold. He's using one of those old high elf models, right? However, there is the priest in Uther's tomb in Western Plaguelands who to this day in Classic uses a male night elf model, but it was stated very clearly that he is supposed to be a high elf. So we can infer from this that Braylon Firehand, to get back on topic, that gives you the quest to kill the Sons of Cenarius, is most likely a high blood elf, and she has that quest for the Stonetalon Peak. And I kind of like how they positioned it on the path to Stonetalon Peak. It's kind of random in a way, and I suppose it would have made for a lot of issues with maybe Alliance killing the quest giver or something of the like, but it's quite a curious position, and I get that they changed it, but also at the same time, kind of interesting. And here we have one last thing before I leave you guys. And here we have one last thing, and that is a look at the magnificent fire elemental models. If you've followed the channel at all, then you know that I am absolutely flabbergasted by the way that fire and flames looked in the alpha version. Kind of same with light sources and anything that emits light of any kind. It usually looks better in the alpha version. But I mean, just standing next to this thing, the performance is tanking. So it's hella unoptimized, and I'm not surprised that they tone it down. But things like that, the pathways, the way that fire elementals look and everything, it just kind of gives you an idea of this grander kind of vision that they had. Like, they really wanted people to kind of buy into this virtual world that they were creating. I just want to say thank you all so much for watching and supporting, and I hope that you enjoyed this look at Stonetalon Mountains and the comparison to what it used to be. You can see there are some key differences, but interestingly enough, also a lot of what was already there still is, and I think that's always very remarkable to see, considering that by now this version is almost 21 years old. And with that, I will leave you. I wish you all the best for 2024, and let's hope that we can add at least another 2,000 subscribers to the 2,000 we got in 2023. That would be awesome. I will continue to provide you with content. Thank you very much, and take care.